Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Everyday Heroes podcast. Today it's going to be a cool episode, and it's going to be a cool episode because I can't tell you the amount of times that I have spoken to either friends or colleagues who have told me that their marriage has taken a hit, right? That their marriage has taken a hit when they are busy raising neurodivergent children. Now, I don't know about you. Hang on. I'm going to have to just pause for a second because I need to enter in some information that I didn't do before. Um, you know, marriage is hard. Let's just call it for what it is. Marriage is hard. And then when you put on a diagnosis, whether it's an autism diagnosis, whether it is an ADHD diagnosis, whether it is a cancer diagnosis, it is brutal, right? And it takes a hit to the marriage. And so today we have Angela Griffith. She's also known as the Christian expert and, Christian sexpert, apologies, who is talking all about how we can improve our relationships, how we can improve our sex lives. Because I can tell you right now, a lot of marriages who are raising neurodivergent children probably aren't having the best sex life right now. So if you've got small kids around and you don't want them to hear about this conversation, maybe you want to be this a little bit more private, just know that that is what's going on. So, Angela, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
You are so welcome. You are so welcome. I'm really excited to have you on because do you know what? I've been married for 18 years, right? And it's a long time. It's a long time to be with one person. And it's important that we actually can look at how we can spice this up. I was just saying to a girlfriend of mine, just before we got on the podcast, when we go into a diagnosis, right, women turn around and go, oh my gosh, I'm in fight or flight. The last thing I want to do, the last thing I am thinking about is having sex. I don't want to be touched. I don't want to be looked at. I don't even have the urge to have sex. And then on the other hand, you've got the man going, well, I need sex in order to just regulate. Like I need it, like I need air. And I need it to be able to function and to be able to do all the things. So this podcast is going to be a beautiful way to like marry that up and look at how we can get that together so that both man and woman can get their needs met. What does that look like and how we can improve our relationships?
Yeah. You brought up something that I talk about a lot in what I do is how women really need, stereotypically, women really need to have a regulated nervous system before they can experience pleasure, before they can have any sort of interest in sexual activity. And part of that is because women stereotypically experience what is called responsive desire. And that is your body needs to be doing sexy things before your brain remembers, oh my gosh, I love sex. I want to be having sex. And so that's why if your husband comes home and your kid has been having a meltdown, 17 times today, and you're trying to make dinner and everybody's screaming, and he comes home and kind of, sidles up behind you and grabs you and is like, hey, do you want to hop in bed later? Your immediate response is no, back off. And that's because you are not doing anything sexy with your body in that moment. And your body, if you experience responsive desire, and men, I want to say that men can absolutely experience responsive desire. It's just stereotypically it's a higher percentage that women experience responsive desire. So that's why in that moment your brain and your body say, no, I don't, because I'm not doing anything sexy with my body. So no, I don't want to have sex. And so and then the flip side of that is stereotypically men experience what is called spontaneous desire. And that is, oh, the sky's blue, I could have sex. And their brains and their bodies are kind of more in alignment with he feels his brain is sort of leading the charge of, I want to have sex, and his body says, I can absolutely get on board with this. Whereas with women, it's your body needs to be leading the charge before your brain decides to get on board. But then we have an added layer of complications in the majority of, I don't know if Western societies is the right word, because you're Australia, right? I don't know if
Yeah, yeah,
Australia is necessarily, but I see a lot of this in the US, in North American, United States, Canadian, the way that men in the culture here are socialized is from a young age, boys are not really allowed to express any emotions. We're told that emotions are a female thing. Men are told, boys don't cry, man up, things like that. And so, and really, their identities, their egos, their super ego, their ego, all of those things are sort of wrapped up in their sexual performance, combined with a complete lack of emotional literacy, leads to men feeling like they need to have sex in order to regulate their nervous system, and they need to use a woman's body to regulate their nervous system. And that leads to resentment in the marriage, because now the woman feels like sex is one more thing that she has to do. And now he has made himself one more person that she has to use her brain and her body to regulate the emotions for. Because especially when we have neurodivergent children, when I'm talking about parenting, when I'm talking about the parenting stuff, I explain that even for neurotypical children, whether it's a neurodiverse child or a neurotypical child, we have to act as their external self-control. We have to act as their external emotional regulation until they have acquired enough skills to regulate themselves, to exhibit their own sort of self-control. And so when your husband comes to you and is putting a demand of regulating his emotions through sex, he's turning himself into one more thing that she has to manage. And that's just not sexy. That's not, you are putting her in the same headspace as when she is parenting, and she's not going to want to
yeah.
have sex then. And so, and really it's this, and it's a much, and I get accused of man bashing all the time. Oh, you just hate men. No, I actually think men are capable of emotionally regulating themselves without using their penises. I think you've just been socially conditioned to believe otherwise, and it feels hard to learn new things. And so that leads to a lot of complications when you've already got a complicated marriage because of various diagnoses.
I also want to point out that if you've got a mum who's at home trying her best to regulate her own children through co-regulation, right? She's doing all the regulating. She's trying to maintain that, homeostasis, only for dad to come home and he needs regulation too. And it can send women to breaking point. And
Mhm.
I love men. I think that we couldn't
Yes.
have this, planet without men, right? I can't make a baby by myself, right? So it's really important. They have such an important role, but it needs to look in a way where mum can have some decompression time before we even look into that. And sometimes it's just that we're so exhausted. So, this is why I'm so excited, because I want to get into it. So I hear this a lot. I hear this. I've heard it from parents who don't have neurodivergent children, and I've heard it from parents who do.
Mhm.
What happens when your relationship, your marriage, feels like your roommates? What do you do then?
Yeah. So one of the things that I found through my coaching practice is, um, usually when couples have gotten to that stage, they have forgotten how to have fun together. Usually fun is sort of the first thing to go when the marriage comes under stress, or you're dealing with things like navigating a new diagnosis and things like that. And so one of the pillars of my work is talking about there's 13 different types of intimacy that we can experience in marriage. Sex is only one of them. And sex is supposed to be the celebration of intimacy that you've established before you've ever reached the bedroom. So if you are supposed to be having something to celebrate, And establishing intimacy before you ever get to the bedroom, how do we do that? Well, we look at the other 12 intimacies. And one of those intimacies is recreational intimacy. And that's all about how you have fun together as a couple. And turns out when you have 17 children and all you need is one really to cause one with a diagnosis to cause mass amounts of chaos. But usually, that's not how genetics work. So you've got 17 children, at least half of them have, the alphabet soup of a diagnosis. And you spend all day managing big feelings, managing behaviors, managing, what I homeschool, so
As do I.
yeah, and like uh, why my kid has never had a problem with like addition, subtraction, borrowing, carrying. Why all of a sudden has he decided that 4 minus 6 is 0? I don't know. Like he's been doing this sort of like 3-digit subtraction for 6 months, but within the last week, he has decided that 4 minus 6 is 0, and that's going to be the thing that sends me over the edge, right? And so I need to, when I am in that moment of, but why? Why are you like this? I need to be able to fall back on the intimacies with my husband to sort of buoy me through not sending him to public school. So, uh, so tonight I was actually a little bit late for tonight's podcast because we were falling back on recreational intimacy. And this is actually a super great example because when people think about intimacy in marriage, they think about it has to be this date night. We have to have a babysitter, we have to dress up and go out and all of that. And it's just not realistic for the majority of families that I know, whether or not they have kids with a diagnosis or not, because life is too expensive to live. I cannot afford a babysitter and to go out and to do something and, blah, blah, blah. So looking at the intimacies, we can experience intimacy with our spouses with our kids present. So tonight after dinner, we sat down and we played a board game together as a family. So yes, I was experiencing recreational intimacy with my husband, but my kid was there too. And so that made me feel more regulated and more connected with both my husband and my kid because he didn't have to do any subtraction for the board game. Thank God. But having that to fall back on, brought more fun for the entire family, left us all feeling a little more connected, left us all feeling a little more regulated. And that can possibly lead to other forms of connection for after bedtime.
So basically, what I'm hearing is, and I'm thinking about it myself, like in situations with me, I definitely know that I need decompression. And when I say decompression, I need some time out, something to just relax before I can even get my head in the space of let's go.
Yeah.
Right. And I love that idea that you're doing connection through a board game or doing something fun, because I feel like you're taking mum out of fight or flight. You're taking her into a place where she can laugh, she can have a good time. There's no pressure, there's no stress. You're just really being present and just connecting with the people around you. Is that exactly what you're?
Yeah. So one of the illustrations that I usually use when I'm talking about recreational intimacy is all of the intimacies really interplay and build on each other. So just because we are focusing on recreational intimacy, typically I don't know how board games work in your marriage, but in my marriage, a board game is typically also going to involve conflict intimacy and emotional intimacy and communication intimacy, because the conflict's going to come because I'm going to have to let my husband know that he's a big fat loser and he's going to lose tonight. And then I have to use the emotional intimacy to make him feel better when he does lose. And he did lose tonight. And, then we're going to have to use the communication intimacy like a blend of communication intimacy and emotional intimacy to make him feel better because he lost, right? So you can, like, with that illustration, you can see that you're now working on two, three, four intimacies all at the same time, right? Just by playing a board game together. And it can lead, but also, like, I know that in some families, a board game does not lead to feeling more connected and, more regulated. It just leads to more chaos. And so you need to identify things that are fun for just you and your spouse, but also are fun for you, like all of you together as a family. And so, yes, after a board game, mom can definitely feel more regulated and more connected, but also you might not. And so, you might need to have your husband take over bedtime so that you can have 30 minutes to get a shower and not have anyone screaming for you or needing you, so that you can regulate your own nervous system, do whatever it is that regulates your nervous system. I just posted a video the other day where I talked about, think about a time where you have ever been like super stressed out or in pain, and were you able to experience pleasure in that moment? No, because pleasure is not something that can truly exist in any, like, non-sexual pleasure. I'm not specifically referring about sexual intimacy here, but any sort of pleasure really cannot exist when you are completely dysregulated, when your nervous system is completely out of whack. You really truly cannot experience pleasure in that moment. And so that's why it's so important that you are taking the space to regulate your own nervous system, so that you can experience pleasure and sex doesn't feel like a chore. Because if sex is the playground of our marriage, you need to be able to play and you need to be able to experience pleasure.
Before we move on to the 13 types of intimacy, one of the things I just wanted to ask you is, so with going back to the board game, and I totally agree, it's not going to
Yeah.
be relevant to every family, because there has definitely
Yeah.
been some screaming over at our house because someone lost. I will not name names. It was not an adult. And, so
This definitely was not something that we could have done when my son was younger. The board games are a skill, a learned skill. Learning to lose is a skill. And so if your children do not have those skills yet, figure out what what something else is going to be for your family.
yeah, no, absolutely. But what I wanted to find out was, were you playing board games with your husband pre-children? And is that why you use it as something to
Yeah.
reconnect back to the beginning of your marriage or your relationship?
Yes. Yeah. So we've always been huge gamers. It's the last several years we've gotten even more into it as we have been facing down my own um, diagnoses, and my body has started kind of crap out on me. It's something that my body still allows me to do. Um, but so it definitely is something that we did pre-kids. And so that's what I really do in my coaching practice when I am working with a couple is, typically couples come to me because they're experiencing libido discrepancies. Usually he wants it more, she doesn't want it so much, and what's wrong with me and what's wrong with her, and make her want it more, blah, blah, blah. And the first thing, and couples are always confused when they come to see me, because the first thing I ask is, when was the last time you had fun together? And usually they'll say, well, we had sex, a month ago. I'm like, no, I don't care about your sex life. I want to know when the last time you had fun together was, because typically the recreational intimacy, the fun is the first thing to go. And so when I am seeing a couple for a libido discrepancy, the first plan that I'm going to make with that couple is a plan for recreational intimacy. And I want to talk about, how did you have fun before you got married? How did you have fun before you had kids? And sometimes there are not ways to truly engage in the same sort of recreational intimacy after kids as you did pre-kids. Before kids, my husband and I were heavily involved in community theater. And we did a lot of shows together, whether we were both acting or whether I was acting and he was lighting director and making me look good on stage. And that simply isn't something between his job and, practices going from 7 o'clock to midnight some nights just really isn't feasible with small children in the house. So, but we can still attend theater performances. You know, if a show comes along that is really important that both of us see, we prioritize our budget so that we can get tickets in the nosebleed seats and we can go see a theater performance. And so that is a way that we can still experience the magic of theater together, something that we really enjoyed pre-kids, but we really can't do after kids. So there are some things that aren't necessarily doable in the exact same way, but I love working with my clients to figure out how they can start having fun together, even if the ways that they're used to doing it don't feel accessible anymore. There's a lot of
No.
creative solutions that can be had. And when you're in the middle of it, you can feel stuck and you feel like, I don't see how we can possibly do this thing that we used to do. And so that's where someone like me comes in that can give you an outside perspective and can say, hey, no, you definitely can't do that in this exact same way. But have you thought about trying it this way? Or maybe this is an option.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. It's so hard when you're in it, when you're so close to it. I find it very hard to just be able to try and figure out solutions. So I love that. Okay, so let's talk about these 13 types of intimacy, because I am really keen to understand what they are and what they mean. Like, because like you were saying before about recreational intimacy, I wouldn't have known what that is. So if you can just elaborate a little bit more, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So I'll run through the list kind of quick and dirty for you. But I also want to say that if anyone wants to go deeper with any of the intimacies, you can hop over to my website and get 31 days of intimacy. And I walk you through each of them in very practical and accessible ways. Like it's never, we, for the longest time, we're a single income homeschooling family. And so, all of the influences that are like, we got a couples massage and we did a spa weekend. I'm like, yeah, cool. Great to be you. Could never be me. I don't know what planet you live on. So
What's the
these are
website,
all,
just so that people,
it's
if
the
they're
Christian sex. Yeah, it's the christiansexpert.com.
okay, great, perfect.
All right, so let's run through these. So we have aesthetic intimacy. Those are the kind of just what I was talking about. Those are the Instagram moments that like she dragged him out for a coffee to watch the sunset together and then took the Instagram perfect picture. But it's creating moments of beauty together. And it's kind of cheesy, but it's still important. And those are sort of the things that and when I say that the intimacies build on each other. Commitment intimacy is all about how far you've come and where you're going together as a couple. So, as part of commitment intimacy, you can look back on your Instagram moments and say, that was so fun, even though it was kind of cheesy to go get the Instagram coffee and watch the sunset, right? So that would be commitment intimacy. Communication intimacy, very self explanatory, tons of resources out there on that. Conflict intimacy, people don't think of conflict as a form of intimacy, but realistically, in a healthy relationship, conflict should leave you feeling like you have either moved closer together or you have moved forward together as a couple. Um, Creative intimacy, one of the examples is doing theater together. Like my husband and I did community theater, and we had a lot of late nights in a theater, just the two of us, with him going up and down the ladder and me standing in one spot going, okay, this is not the right shade, put another film in, or this is not the right angle, you gotta hit it in quarter inch this way, right? But it was creative intimacy. It could also be like the paint and sip nights at your local artist shop, or if you can't afford so many things, if you can't afford to do like a paint and sip night, go to your local Dollar Tree. I don't know what there would be in Australia, but there's stores in America where everything's like a dollar. And our Dollar Trees have little canvases, paints, and paintbrushes. And you can get your own like paint setup for less than $20. Honestly, probably $10 or less. Um, and then you just go on YouTube and you look up like Bob Ross painting tutorials. Or there's one of the creators that I love, Andrea Nelson Art. She does the most accessible artist ideas. And though like they are so good that you can do them with your kids as well if you wanted to do creative intimacy as a whole family. Her stuff is amazing. It's Andrea Nelson Art is her social tag. But you
I'll
can
put
get
it in the show notes.
yeah, all of those, like you can get the stuff from the Dollar Tree. Or in the States we have Five Below. Five Below has pretty quality art supplies as well.
So for
So
anyone listening who's not sure, Dollar Tree would be equivalent to like the Reject Shop or like you see like a lot of $2 shops around. So it's the same sort
yeah.
of thing. Yep.
Yeah, I know. In the States, it's now the $1.25 store.
That's funny. Well, so much better stuff than we do. So yeah.
No, I don't know if it's better. I think it's just different because I have seen y'all's like Kmart hauls.
Kmart is the yeah, it's where it's at. It really is. So
Yeah,
I love Kmart. I'm definitely one of those people that would be like, oh, I'll just peruse the aisles, and next thing you know, you go buy a basket full of things. But anyway,
yeah. Occasionally, an Australian Kmart haul comes across my For You page, and I'm like, oh, why do we not have that?
come over anytime.
Okay, so then we have crisis intimacy. I just recorded a podcast for my own show about or am I don't know. We had a weekend away this weekend and my brain is still recovering. But if you want to learn about crisis intimacy, listen to my podcast in the next few weeks because I'm talking more about how going through a crisis together should bring you closer together as a couple. And that really plays into the whole diagnosis thing. That's sort of a long-term situation, but there's also, like my husband's grandparents died within 48 hours of each other and we had a double funeral, right? So that's more of a like short-term crisis sort of situation. Or, if somebody wrecks their car or things like my husband, we had a situation. My husband's a truck driver and a lady pulled out in front of him and he rear-ended her and he wound up getting fired even though she was cited. He was completely, his dash cam proved he was not at fault. He did everything that he could to possibly avoid, but she just was really, really dumb, pulled out in front of a semi. And walking through that as a couple was crisis intimacy. Emotional intimacy, tons of books about emotional intimacy out there on the market. Intellectual intimacy it could be a couple of different things like listening to a podcast like this one and discussing your thoughts afterwards. But it could also be learning a new skill together. So whether, you guys decide to watch some YouTube tutorials on how to fix the leaky faucet, that could be a form of intellectual intimacy. But that would also be a form of work intimacy because work intimacy isn't about showing up at your husband's office and making it weird. Work intimacy is about working towards your common goals, your common dreams. So we're seeing a lot of resurgence of recession sort of hobbies now, grandma hobbies with gardening and canning. Both of those are forms of work intimacy. Working in a garden together is a form of work intimacy because you're working towards a common goal. Parenting as a form of intimacy. Every woman who has shoved a watermelon out of her vagina and then watched her husband do skin to skin with the little wrinkly watermelon and has had her ovaries stand up and say, do it again, knows exactly what I'm talking about when I say parenting is a form of intimacy.
Absolutely on that one. Yeah.
Yeah. But also watching your husband work through his own traumas to respond with calm grace and kindness to your to his own mini me knows exactly what I'm talking about when I'm saying parenting is a form of intimacy as well, because that's when you set the kid up with a snack and a screen and you say, Mama's going to see you in 20 minutes. Don't knock on the door.
Don't knock on the
Uh,
door. I love it.
yeah. Recreational intimacy, we talked about. Sexual intimacy, very obvious. Spiritual intimacy, do you have a spiritual practice together? I am the Christian sexpert, but I say that you don't have to be a Christian to follow me. I would say probably at least half of my followers are of no particular faith affiliation, or they are actually what they would call themselves evangelicals, where they have left the Christian faith because of the harm that the modern American evangelical church has perpetuated. But they say that, what I do is the sex education that they should have received. And so, what I teach is from a Christian perspective, but there's still, it's applicable to so many marriages because, I'm not out here saying that you have to, um, go to a Christian church to experience spiritual intimacy. Um, would that be, if you were asking me as my bestie, I would say, well, yeah, you should probably go to a Christian church. But if you are looking to have a spiritual intimacy, doesn't I mean, there are other spiritual practices that you can be engaging in with your spouse that don't have to involve a Christian church, and I recognize that. So whatever spiritual intimacy is going to look like in your marriage, it could even be something like, I know a couple that once a month they go and they serve at a homeless shelter together. That, or they serve, I think is it's a like a food, like serving food to the homeless sort of thing. Um, and I think that's just through a civic organization, if I recall correctly. And that could be like a spiritual practice if you are wanting to do something not expressly of any particular faith affiliation, but that would be an example of something that would kind of fall into that category. So that's sort of the quick and dirty rundown on all of them. And if you want to go deeper, one of the things I do in coaching is customized intimacy plans for couples based on the life that you're actually living, and not some program that I have come up with. I help couples figure out ways to make the intimacy fit into their lives and not try and force themselves into my program. But also the 31 days of intimacy is available on my website if you feel like you need support with developing any of these.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that there's that customization, because every couple is going to be different. Like, I don't think that there is anything that's going to be the same from couple to couple. So this then takes me to my next question around a lot of the listeners that are listening as part of the URC community, who are part of the Everyday Heroes community. We are raising neurodivergent children, and some of them have very high needs. Some of them are to the point where mums feel like they are completely drained because they are fully touched out, fully just don't have any capacity left in their body to be able to even talk, to be able to hug, to do any of those things. What do we do in that situation where mum is completely touched out and can't even think about being touched again? What does that look like in terms of having a sex life? Like, if you're not coping, how can we assist with that?
So, um, one of the things that I do when I have couples come to me, and if this couple came to me for coaching, the first thing I would do is I would say, okay, we're going to take sex off the table. We're going to take sex off the table for the next month or 2 months, and we are going to regulate the marriage first. Because if sex is the celebration of intimacy that you've established before you've ever reached the bedroom, y'all need to figure out how to establish something to celebrate first. And that needs to be the lack of sex is not the actual problem. Lack of sex is the indicator that there's a problem further upstream, because healthy women in safe marriages don't turn down good sex for no reason. So we need to identify the problem upstream, which is that she is overburdened and burnt out. And we need to address that first. And we know that obligation kills desire. So if she's feeling obligated to have sex, if she's feeling pressure to have sex, even if your husband is a complete angel, you can be putting pressure on yourself. Well, like that pressure can just be internalized from messaging that you've received from a harmful church teaching, from popular media, things like that. So the pressure isn't always necessarily coming from a bad husband, quote unquote bad husband, because I'm like truly not trying to man bash. And so sometimes the simple act of taking sex off the table and sort of dealing with the marriage itself can sort of get things back on the right track. But so I just recorded a podcast with a massage therapist, and talking about the importance of non-sexual touch in marriage. And she had the most genius suggestion, because I asked, I was like, what if you're feeling completely touched out? Like, how do you, because we talk about co-regulating with our kids, but we almost never hear anyone talking about co-regulating with your spouse in healthy ways, right? We get the pressure of, well, he needs to have sex with you to feel connected, but that's not a healthy co-regulation, right? But we don't, so we need to have more discussion of how we are co-regulating with our spouses in healthy ways. And what she said, I was like, why has this never occurred to me? She said, I like to start with the feet. And I was like, oh, this podcast just took a turn. But she was so like, what, and then she was talking about it more. She was so right about it, because she's like, it's so far. One of the things that I talk about is women live perpetually disconnected from our bodies, right? Think about it. The first time you got your period, it was awful. You just want to lay in bed and sob. Oh, nope. You got to pull an Elsa, conceal, don't feel. You still got to go to school, right? So you were taught from the very first time you got your period, to disconnect from your body and what you're experiencing in your body. I'm getting to the point of what you asked me, I promise. So it's no surprise that when we get to the bedroom, we don't know how to experience pleasure or orgasm, because we're in this perpetual state of disconnection, right? So, but when we think about it, a woman, when she thinks about where her consciousness exists in her body, if 9 out of 10 women are going to say it's in her head, she exists up in her head. She doesn't exist in her body. And so when this massage therapist said, start with the feet, I was like, oh, that actually makes so much sense. Because if a woman is existing primarily in her head, the feet feel so far removed from where she is typically existing. It is the least threatening place to touch on her body if she's already feeling touched out. And there's this spot on your hand that's the fleshy part between your thumb and your forefinger, right? And if you are even the slightest bit into alternative health, you have been told that squeezing that spot can help a headache, right? That same spot, like that same what's the word I want? Nerve.
Yeah, like a nerve
Ending.
urban. Yeah. So it's funny. I got taught this by my grandmother many, like
Yeah,
well before natural
right,
therapy was cool. Like, do you know what I mean?
right,
So yeah.
right. But that same spot exists between the big toe and the first toe on your feet. So having your husband just, first of all, hold your foot in between both of his hands and give a deep pressure squeeze can help you calm down. But also having him use his thumb and forefinger and put pressure on that spot in between your big toe and your first toe, It's magical. I don't know what sort of witchcraft they're teaching in massage schools, but this is apparently a thing. And so what she said was to start with the feet. So if you are feeling like, okay, I don't know if I don't necessarily want this to lead to anything, but we can, you can give me a little bit of a foot massage. We can try this out and see where it leads. That is an option as well.
So is that also taking into account reflexology as well?
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for.
There we go.
I'm like, I don't know what this word is, but it's a word. That's the, yes. Yep, that's the one.
Okay, good. All right. So then in every couple, right, we want to be having good sex. Obviously, that is the aim. That is always especially in like when we're talking about marriages, we're talking about in a healthy relationship. We want to have really good sex. How do we feel? Like the grind, Angela. It's next level. And like whether you have a neurodivergent child or not, like if you don't have a neurodivergent child, no doubt both parents are working and they're coming home and they're barely giving their child any time because they're exhausted, they're tired, they're probably picking them up from after school care. It's a rush. We've got to get dinner, got to get into bed, got to do your reader, all this stuff. If you're in a one income household raising a neurodivergent child, it's rough, right? It's rough regardless. Raising kids no one told me. No one told me this. I would like to know why no one told me this. Like, it is the hardest job outside of anything. Like, going to work is easy compared to raising children. And so if your life doesn't feel sexy or romantic the way that we see on the movies, right? Where you're like getting swept up by the guy and going out on lovely dates and like getting dressed up. Like, my clothes do not fit the way that they used to. Okay. I'm being just truthfully honest. Like going for a date, don't feel so crash hot because that's just the reality of it. So then what do we do? How do we make it feel good? How do we make it feel cinema worthy and make it look good so that it can lead to that good sex?
Well, I would say that we need to let go of the idea that sex is supposed to be cinema worthy.
Yes.
So
Yes. And look
that's,
cinema worthy as well, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and if
So
we're being completely honest, and again, I hope that there's no young children around, but like, good sex does not need to be looking like porn. Like,
no,
I do not look like a size 6, with the biggie boobs and like look at no. I'm sure I
no.
don't look that crash hot, but apparently my husband thinks I look good, but it's
So I have to tell you that some of the most popular content that I put out on social media is when I wear what I call my granny jammies and I talk about like this is why grandma had 6 kids. And right, it's the like little house on the prairie, like floor length moo nightgowns. I don't know if you guys have another word for them. But like
probably a nightgown, like a
yeah,
night
like
or a nightie.
the amount of men who find those like my grandmother called them house coats, house dresses, found them irresistible. Like some of the most
Really?
popular content that I put out. Oh yeah. Yeah. Like the little teeny tiny flower pastel-y, flower sack, little house on the prairie print nightgowns. Like so many people are like, yeah, anytime I wear those, my husband thinks it's an invitation. Right. Um, because real life married sex doesn't look like it looks like in the movies. Sometimes real life married sex is, do you have sex tonight? Yeah, okay, if you're on top and I don't have to move. Is real life married
True
sex.
spoken words. Yes.
Like, can we please normalize not having any energy? The sex is, I kind of like, I call it, it's like pizza, right? Like, you have to work really hard to make bad pizza. And, even mediocre pizza is still good, right? And so married sex, for the most part, is kind of like that. The majority of the time, it's going to be mediocre, but it's still good. Like, if you offer me pizza or, chicken nuggets. I'm gonna pick pizza because pizza's always gonna be better than chicken nuggets, right? Like, that's kind of what the reality of we've been married for over 20 years and sex is just kind of like that sometimes. Now, are there absolutely times where you're like, I just like it's been like that for like the last 6 months and I want something more? Absolutely. Like that's so we actually know statistically that women are the ones who are more likely to say that they want to spice things up in the bedroom than men. So that is also a completely normal desire. But I also like I just want to make clear if you're thinking that you need to spice it up because it doesn't look like the movies and it doesn't look like porn, that's not reality. And it's okay if you are content with rolling over and you want to, okay, right? It doesn't always have to be this big production, seduction, whatever. But one of the things that I do is I create tools that help couples make things spicier, more interesting, spice it up. So one of the things that I have is this journal called Intimate Conversations, and this has over 100 prompts in it, and it's designed to take you deeper in your communication about your sex lives. But you would use the journal to help create a spicier sex life over the long term. So it has questions like, I want to learn how to do this sexual activity. Use 3 words or phrases to describe your current sex life. What words do you want to be able to use in the future? The last time I felt sexually powerful was. The next time we have sex, I want to feel. And so you write down your answer, you give it to your spouse, you give them time and space to read it. You don't stare into their soul while they're trying to make it weird, right? You like give them privacy. Then they get to respond to the same prompt. They get curious about your answers. Oh my gosh, I had no idea that you were interested in that activity. Why, like what's interesting about that? They get to ask questions. Then you get it back, you get to read their answers, you get to get curious about their answers. And so that's one way that couples can start being more intentional with their sex life and making things more interesting on a consistent basis, while also balancing with sometimes it's just going to be frozen pizza and it's not going to be a chef's table homemade, you know, freshly picked tomatoes and freshly made mozzarella margarita pizza,
Yeah,
you know.
totally. Oh, I love that. And because it's very true, and it happens so often. Tell me, where can people find you on socials?
I am the Christian Sexpert across all social media, and my website is thechristiansexpert.com. That's where
Mhm.
you can get the journal, the 31 days of intimacy, or reach out for other forms of support.
Perfect. So I'm going to lead you into our last part of the podcast, which is my 5 rapid fire questions. So are you ready?
Absolutely.
Okay. What's one common myth you wish every couple would throw out?
Oh gosh. That men need sex. Sex is not a need. Sex cannot require the use of someone else's body. No one dies in an explosion of semen if he goes without orgasms on a regular basis. Sex, when you call it a need, you're creating obligation, and that removes it removes consent, it removes desire. It's do you want her to choose you, or do you want her to be obligated to you?
Yeah, I love that. If you could give couples just one word to describe great intimacy, what would it be?
Safe.
Oh, 100% on that one. That's yes. Because who you can't connect if you're not feeling safe, right? Um,
Yes. And obligation is not safe. You know, so
always, always. What's the most surprising thing you've learned in your 20 plus years of studying human sexuality?
oh my gosh. I don't I'm not even sure. I mean, there are things that So as a sex coach, I am one of the only Christian sex educators that I'm aware of that is pro kink. A lot of Christian sex educators are not a fan of kink. So I have learned about a lot of kinks, a lot of different activities, a lot of different fetishes in my time. And I think it's just gotten to the point where it's like, oh yeah, that tracks. Like somebody will message me something and they're like, have you ever heard of this kink? And I'm like, that tracks. Like there's always going to be, humans are always going to find a way to use things for sex. Um, I don't know. I don't know if there's been any like huge surprise. You know what I love though? Maybe as my own, I think something that has surprised me. I don't, this is a terrible, I need, guys, it's 10 o'clock here in the States. So my ADHD medicine is gone. It's just gone.
We will wrap it up, I
So
promise.
no, I just feel bad because they're like, she's not answering this at all. So I think one of the things that has surprised me is my own capacity to find ways to transform everyday household things into sexy purposes. So I have a series in my Patreon where I talk about accommodating disabled bodies for sex, like during sex. Um, and I was on Amazon one day and I saw um, this thing, and it's like silicone, and it's a long stretchy silicone, and it's got two holes at the end. And really, people are using it to like you put an electric toothbrush in it, and like you can then hold the toothbrush without having to be able to close your hand in a grip, because it turns it into a handle, right? So it like turns your electric toothbrush into like a handle, or or your spoon into a handle, in case someone can't fully use their hands, can't fully close their hands, right? So it's like meant for people with like Parkinson's or MS or things like that, right? And I was like, you know what you could do? You could put a dildo in that. You could put a vibrator in that and make it a handled vibrator. So my ability to look at any sort of household object and say, I could come up with a way to use that for sex,
That's funny.
surprises even myself sometimes.
It's a creative mind. I love it. I'm here. Um, okay, one last question is, finish this sentence. Every couple needs blank at least once a week.
Connection.
Yeah.
Connection. Um if you aren't intentionally, connection doesn't just happen spontaneously. Connection, anything that is important to us, this is one of my other soapboxes. Anything that is important to us, we invest our time, talents, and our resources in. And so we cannot expect to have a healthy, happy, thriving marriage just spontaneously. And one of the requirements for a happy, healthy, thriving marriage is connection. And so, if your marriage is important to you, it's going to require an investment of your time, talent, and resources. And I understand, believe me, everybody in this house is neurodivergent. All right, I just confessed my ADHD to you. My husband and my son, I have the inattentive type. My husband and son both have the hyperactive type. And that is such a delight for my brain. And so everyone in this house is neurodivergent. And so I get it. It feels hard. It does. Even me, as a sex and intimacy coach who has been studying these things for over 20 years, sometimes I don't want to connect with that man. Sometimes I would like to violently connect with his face. Okay.
Stop it. You're making me laugh too much. One
So
more.
I get it. Like the connection can be hard, but you have to find ways to connect calmly and peacefully and intentionally for a happy and thriving marriage.
Always, 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 always. Now, I do know that you have a freebie to share with the community. Can you share
Yes.
with us what it is?
Actually, that question leads right into it. So, the freebie is called The Small Moments of Connection, and it is all about it's full of ideas for ways that you can connect in 15 minutes or less throughout your week. It is designed for you to have a conversation with your spouse, to start intentionally connecting on a regular basis in ways that make sense for your lives and fit into your lives and doesn't feel like one more thing on the to-do list. It's about cultivating something to look forward to intentionally.
I love that so much. I've already downloaded the freebie as well, so I think it's awesome. So definitely, if you get a chance, please do me a favor and download it because it will, yeah, any kind of information that can help a marriage is so important because we don't want neurodivergent children being in a divorce. Like it's hard. It's hard being married. It's hard being in divorce. Like to choose your hard, right? So, um,
As long as your marriage is safe,
of
as long
course.
as you as long as you have a safe marriage, absolutely, you are choosing your hard. And if you need help figuring out if your marriage is just hard or if it's unsafe and hard, please reach out to a therapist to get some clarity on whether you just need some support from someone like me who does coaching to help you rediscover the fun and the intimacy in your marriage, or whether you need the support of a therapist to make the marriage safe or to get you and your children to a place of safety.
1,000,000% safety has to always come first. And I totally agree with your sentiments. And I do urge anyone who does feel like they are unsafe in a relationship or in a marriage to seek further help. Thank you so much for your time. I know that you can go and get a restful sleep now. And
Yes.
I will get all the information and pop it in the show notes. And yes, we can go from there. Awesome.
Go have good sex.
Definitely. Thanks, Angela.
Thank you.